Welcome to Who Knows, and today I have somebody on who knows about Bitcoin, basketball, and a whole lot of other stuff. It is Ulric Pattillo. Ulric, thanks for being here.
Glad to be here, and thanks for accommodating the weird schedule events over the last couple weeks. Glad to finally make it happen.
Yeah, I'm glad to be talking. I want to start out with a story for everybody. So I went to the Swan Bitcoin conference 3 years ago. It was I think we were all there when the FTX thing was happening.
That's right.
It was a crazy week, crazy time to be there. So 2022, I think. But there was a 3-on-3 basketball tournament there, and they set up like this cool court in the out back of the conference, and I played Division III college basketball, and I was like, at that point, I was like, all right, I'm definitely the best basketball player in Bitcoin. These are a bunch of nerds. These are cypherpunks and maybe some reformed bankers. Like, I'm going to dominate, and I'm going to show up and absolutely cook everybody. And I drive up from San Diego. It takes about 3 hours. I get there, and I see you warming up and just windmilling on like in warm-up. So I'm like, God damn it. I thought I was going to dominate, and then Michael Saylor was going to want to meet me. And I got out there, and I was the worst player on my team. One guy played D2, the other guy played D3, and he was younger than me. Big factor at this point. And obviously you are a very good player. You had a good team. There are other good teams. So I was shocked. But that is how we met.
Yeah, like I met so many. I'll be honest, I don't remember meeting you on the court. And the reason why I don't is because we probably met in passing, and you were on the other bracket. So we actually never played against each other. But I do remember that my guys could shoot, but they slowed down at the end. They didn't have the endurance to keep on playing in a half day or all day tournament. And so we ended up losing. And mind you, the windmill, I was very shocked that Corey would have a rim that was about 9 feet tall. And so even though I can windmill,
it was low.
Yeah, it was low. So
I'll cut this part. I'll cut this part. Don't worry.
But I can still windmill on a real court. And it's so funny. I played last night and I went 0 for 7 and 3-pointers. It was, I get it. There's one thing bad about being intelligent that, being like Bitcoiners were thinking. Sometimes overthinking can be too much when it's time to act.
Right.
But the tournament was fun. We ended up losing to some guys that weren't really Bitcoiners that much, but one guy played at Cal, Asian guy. He was very, very good. He's still playing. He still plays, or at least tries to play overseas. I added him on Instagram. We've been friends ever since. And the next year was fun, and I ended up redeeming myself. We lost in the finals 22, and I ended up winning in 23.
Did you? Nice.
Yeah. So hopefully
awesome.
Corey brings the conference back in 26.
Yeah.
And then I can beat him in a 3-point competition. That's
Actually, that was funny. That team, with the guy from Cal, I thought one of them said they played at UCLA, maybe too.
There's a big like Charles Barkley looking guy that I had to end up guarding because I would have the guard from Cal. He was good, but I could stick him. But I had to shift over to guard the 6'6", like maybe a 6'4", but he was like 280. He was bulldozing. I was tired. I'm a guard. Yeah. I'm like, I'm 6'2". At that point, I was 180. And it's like, that's not my job, but my guys were burned out. My team from 23 would have definitely beat them.
Gotcha. It was funny too, because I had heard, I'm like going around meeting my teammates. I'm like, who are these guys? I'm like, well, they're not really Bitcoiners. They go around to these 3-on-3 tournaments and play, and the team that ended up winning. So I figured you were the same, because like, all right, he just goes to these basketball. And then I went to a panel and you were speaking on it.
That's too funny. Yeah, no, it was an awesome panel with Lavish and Lepard. Booth was there. That's when I first met Jeff Booth in person. So yeah, it was kind of like an ad hoc panel. There was like extra time, and like, I was up there. It was a great Bitcoin memory, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So you have a Bitcoin channel and podcast. You write about Bitcoin. You have a new basketball channel that I've been watching.
Thank you.
How do we tie all this together? I mean, I know you take this sort of systematic approach to solving problems, um, which potentially allows you to credibly speak on a lot of different things. What's your approach to looking at tons of different topics and figuring out what's going on?
I'll be honest. I think I was talking about this with my friend back in last week. I forgot why I started the basketball thing from the get go, but we were talking about LeBron James's decline right now, and we were
Yeah.
talking about um, how there are certain things that as players age and as star players age that they should things that they should do theoretically if we weren't talking about individualism and taking what's mine. And if you're going to be team oriented, you would kind of take the Tom Brady or the Tim Duncan approach. And when it's time for you to re up a contract and you really care about team greatness, you would take a little less. Be a socialist for a moment so you can bring in more power, more
Mm-hmm.
punching power, so you can stay competitive, even in your waning years. Tom Brady did it twice. He did it with, I mean, the money that he could have made, he said no, so he can have great players on the Bucks and the Patriots. Same thing with Tim Duncan. He enabled that team to get good free agents so that he could stay relevant till his almost to his last season. And so Kobe Bryant had an opportunity to do that in 2013 and he didn't. He went into his free agent talks. He got 2 years, 25 million. And me as a young Laker fan, and I'm like, yeah, he's going to get the home team give the home team discount. He's going to go get a free agent like, I don't know, Carmelo, some other players that were around, LaMarcus Aldridge, that players in their prime would come and say, okay, yeah, I'll play with you because the price is right. So he didn't, and it made me think, I'm like, "Okay, like, I understand he's an individual, but dang, like, I'm sick of rooting for, like, putting all my eggs in rooting for a team." And so I started becoming more objective in the way I watch sports. I was a fantasy football commissioner as well, and, that also helped me get away from the team fanaticism. And so I start thinking about how to objectively look at sports because I love it. I'm not going to walk away just because of that, or just even Bitcoiners, where we say it's bread and circuses. And it's like, I don't care about sports anymore. I love sports. So I
Mm-hmm.
look at it from just like how we get into Bitcoin. We look at what money is and we get to the root foundational principles of what money is. And so I start looking at, well, what are the root foundational principles that if you take it away, it no longer becomes basketball. And so I have this YouTube channel and I started trying to figure out basically I call them either axioms or theorems of what makes a basketball player productive or great. And I came up with these 5 theorems. You have to go to the channel to find out. But with those theorems, I use them to, okay, well, how do I pull that out in some sort of stat? Like there has to be a way to objectively judge them without doing the barbershop talk and say, well, I think that this guy's that doesn't work. It's just subjectivity. So I'm looking for a formula to justify my theorems, if you will, and I lean into win shares. And so it's like, and we can talk about what that means later, but you see how I tied in like Bitcoin taught me to think about what money really is and not just the dollar that we're handing. It's like use this and don't think about it. In the same way, when you look at ESPN or CBS or all the mainstream media, and they tell you this is how you should think about this player. And 98% of people say, "Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, we should think about this." The mainstream media owns sports just as much, if not more, than the mainstream media owns politics, monetary principles, and I think there's a way to fight um, that type of thought process on multiple fronts. And we don't just give in to, our entertainment or the way we crown, physical champions, and the way we don't just give up the principles and the definition of money.
Yeah, interesting. I I mean, the mainstream media, to me, it's a waiting game. Like, I think old people watch it. Some of these things, like you go and you see, okay, it's broken, it's over, and you can look at a ton of different things right now and say that system is broken, and mainstream media is pretty broken. But I don't really think anyone our age or younger watches it. Like if we're getting basketball coverage, I listen to Zach Lowe, go on Basketball Reference, listen to Bill Simmons, right?
We'll talk about Bill Simmons.
No.
Maybe we probably won't get there. Oh, I can't stand him.
I mean, I know what you mean, of course. But I'm not like going to mainstream media for basketball coverage. I'm not going to mainstream media, CNBC for coverage on the economy, like, and learning about money. So I don't know. I think like we're just kind of waiting for that to collapse. What do you think?
Yeah, but the I think it is collapsing, but the scary thing about what replaces it is there I guess what I'm saying, there is a scary thing about what can replace it. And just because it's collapsing doesn't mean something equally as bad or similarly bad doesn't take its place. And what I mean is, like, for instance, the Bitcoin coverage that we have, the Bitcoin narratives that we're developing outside of the big three-letter news sources, outside of New York Times and the LA Times or whatever. um, we have an opportunity to actually say we're all in this together. Again, I'm not a socialist. Everyone works out their own incentives. But when you have a big platform and you got that big platform by being helpful or positive or uplifting about Bitcoin, and then you use that platform to potentially monetize it, that's fine. But when you're monetizing in a way that takes people away from the Bitcoin use case,
Mhm.
that's when I start thinking, gosh, you're no better than the Wall Street Journal. And so what I've seen this cycle is, as a lot of platforms became legitimate and big and essentially full-time gigs as opposed to, part-time projects in the past 2017 to 21, 20, even let's say pre-FTX. I feel like, without better words to say, the plot was lost by a lot of people, and we started getting distracted as to what was the main focus. And in my opinion, I think the distraction was the Bitcoin Treasury companies.
Mhm.
Um, and again, it's not to say that it's intrinsically bad, but just like alcohol is not intrinsically bad, but when you drink too much of it, you get drunk and you could potentially kill someone. And so I think that with the what would you call it? The exponential amount of Bitcoin treasury companies between beginning of 24 and where we are now, what you have is just simple physics, where monetary energy has been dispersed to a lot of these avenues, to a lot of these mediums, where, let's just say there's one or two, and again, everyone has their own incentives. But if we have an alternate history and you just only had, let's just say, MicroStrategy or MetaPlanet, guess what would happen? Those guys would have blown up. Bitcoin would have blown up. And there would be much less confusion, much less volume of trading in these companies that were meant to die and that have died. And the worst part about it, died in a time when Bitcoin's supposed to be going up. 2025 is kind of like three green, one red. And it showed like it wanted to, but I think it could have gone a whole lot further. But we have platforms that are sponsored by Marathon Mining. We have platforms that are sponsored by Similar Scientific. We have people in the Bitcoin space that were Bitcoin influencers that all of a sudden become members of these companies. And so you take, hey, I follow that person. And it's like that person says buy Bitcoin, and I'm not saying you can't do that. But when you're coming brand new into the space and you got 100 units of monetary energy, and the first thing that person says is buy Bitcoin sponsored by this thing, you're going to split the difference. And that split of the difference could have obviously has to impact Bitcoin. You can't say it doesn't. And when you split the difference, and meanwhile you buy into that thing while the early investors are selling, a la ICOs 2007, now you start saying, what did I do this for? I lost 80% on that. Bitcoin went down 20%, and I feel rugged. I feel like it's a generation. It's a Bitcoin cycle generation impact, and people won't soon forget it. And it's probably changed the way a lot of people look at Bitcoin going forward for a short time until something else
Hmm.
happens.
I it's they're interesting points because I actually interpret it as like this cycle. I don't know if it's over or not. We'll see. All the treasury companies were essentially the shit coins of previous cycles, which
Yeah.
I interpret as a good thing. Like actually all that casino type of stuff moved closer to Bitcoin. But it also, yeah, it does more damage to kind of the story of Bitcoin. You're right, because people that like go and just buy one of these Bitcoin treasury companies in their brokerage account and mess with it and it goes down 90%. In a year or two, they'll just say, yeah, I bought Bitcoin and it was terrible, but they didn't buy Bitcoin. So I don't know. I actually viewed it as a positive thing that shit coining was moving back onto Bitcoin, but maybe that's not right.
Again, no, I don't think there's one right way. It's just that it's a way that should be discussed.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm not saying that MicroStrategy is intrinsically evil. I think that Michael Saylor could have been one of the most famous CEOs of all time, and maybe he still has it. Maybe, who knows what the next 4 years will bring. But I'll say this: that when your company is better off at 300,000 than 600,000 Bitcoin, maybe you got your skis over out what your skis out from under your, I
Out
forget
over
the
your
damn
skis.
analogy, but it's like maybe you just went a little too far. And again, who am I to say like Michael Saylor's the most smartest? He's way smarter. Fine, I'm just taking backwards, rear view quarterbacking, if you will. And look, they were better off at 300,000, 250,000 Bitcoin than they are at 600, 700,000. I wonder what would happen if he just stopped diluting shares. Maybe people wouldn't have run away so fast. Maybe they would have trusted a little more, maybe a little more Austrian economics and say, maybe I'm not going to money print so much. Again, he was offering debt instruments, but he's also diluting shares. It's no different than printing money. It's just tearing up the amount of value that the initial shareholder has. Again, like maybe it's yeah, the shit coin, if you will, gets closer to Bitcoin, but yet still all of those coins take away from the principle of what Bitcoin is. Oh, you can get something like Bitcoin, but it's only $1 Cardano. And then it's 30 cents, and then you feel like you're scammed. Well, you didn't really try the real thing. And so you cycle back. But again, the worst part about it is that the people who were a part of those treasury companies, they were waving the Bitcoin flag, but then the near term, what do you call it? High time preference money came, say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, take this money and you can sponsor us. And it's like, gosh, hyper Bitcoinization or easy dollar now.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
easy
true.
dollar now. And a lot of them, everyone, and maybe I would have taken it if I was offered it. But thank God I wasn't offered it, because guess what? I could stick to my principles. I can call things out objectively. I'm like, this is wrong, and it's going to delay hyper Bitcoinization. Um, it's going to be a war. People are going to rise up and fall, and it's not going to impact Bitcoin. 21 million is 21 million, but it could delay the Bitcoin's impact on the fiat currencies of the world, and which
Yeah.
it has.
Interesting parallel that just popped into my head. You're talking about some of these, there's mainstream media coverage of the market, say, and then you have Bitcoin podcasts that get big enough and they kind of almost replace that audience, and then they do the same thing. So you're saying all that, and they're all pushing treasury companies. The interesting parallel is in sports media, like the sports podcasts that get big enough.
That's right.
And from about a month or two ago, where there was the betting scandal in the NBA, and then all these huge podcasts, obviously hilarious, are like, let's take a break to talk about FanDuel. And they're discussing the betting scandals. It's a similar thing going on there, right? Like all of those awesome basketball podcasts, they're just basically subsidiaries of the FanDuels and the DraftKings at this point. It's crazy.
Yeah, again, they took the money that was near to them, and they can't be objective when you're sponsored by the guy at the bottom. And again, it's not to say that, you know, that you can't take sponsorship. Like it's okay, but when you're taking sponsorship from someone with a big bag, they're going to want to control the narrative a little bit. I mean, any any platform of any Bitcoin platform that you see sponsored by something, you have to expect that they cannot remain perfectly objective. They will have to curtail whatever message they're telling you for the benefit of that sponsor. The sponsor is saying, "Hey, we want to give you money. We just want to be like." It's not enough just to be seen. Like it's not enough to say, "Hey, I'm sponsored by MicroStrategy." Ulric, say what you want. I just want my name up there. That could be something. You know, if your platform is big enough, if you're Michael Jackson out there and you want to say something, and it's like, "Hey, we just want our name next to your name." That's fine. But for all the regular people, hey, you got a little platform. We want to give you this money, but with a with some strings attached. No strings attached is good, but you know, you have to assume that none of these Bitcoin platforms are big enough to make a deal with no strings attached. So therefore you have to kind of take whatever they're saying with a grain of salt if you listen to them at all in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, these are, simple that will persist forever, just incentive structures, right? And so
That's right.
you're talking about how do you, at like the operating system level of a society or a country, like the money itself, you can kind of change where the incentives go. So that based on how the money is structured and how it works, you can incentivize people to steal from other people, or
Mhm.
you can incentivize them to provide value to other people. Um, which obviously we both think is something Bitcoin fixes at like that operating level. So why don't we just go back a step? I want to hear how you discovered Bitcoin and went down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I think I would always say that I'm a Bitcoiner. I was always a Bitcoiner, just didn't discover Bitcoin. My dad told me about Bitcoin. I remember the grocery store. I was in the Whole Foods in El Segundo. I was at the in the yogurt aisle, or right at the yogurt, because normally the dairy's on an edge. But it's like
Yeah.
I was right in front of the yogurt, and he said, "Hey, I want to talk to you about Bitcoin." And it's like, "Oh, Dad, I already have Bitcoin." And it's like, "Well, no, I really want to talk to you about it." It's like, "Daddy, I got a lot." He said, you don't have enough." And then he started talking to me about all these people that I should listen to. One of them was Max Kaiser. I'm not necessarily a big fan of him anymore, but
Yeah.
he was one of those people that I listened to early. I listened to the Breed Love and Sailor series early.
Yeah.
And you know, it wasn't, I mean, I got in around, I was a 2017 Tron OG. Of all the cryptocurrencies I bought Tron. I don't know how I literally went like, that one looks good. And so
Yeah.
it's like, I never had that really bad moment where I got rugged by a cryptocurrency, as long as I held long enough. But then it's like, I remember buying Bitcoin 2017. It's like, oh, I need to sell this so I can buy something on this weird, this weird, non weird exchange that has all these weird cryptos. So Bitcoin is always like transitory for me. And then when the COVID event happened, shouldn't be saying that word on YouTube, but you know, it dropped. I'm like, oh, I'll pick up a little Bitcoin. And then like that whole year, then shortly thereafter, my dad talked to me, and he said, you need to buy as much as you can, which I did. I was one of those people who didn't sell his house to buy Bitcoin, but I definitely sold my house sitting on a lot of liquidity. Then it's like, well, where do I go with it? And luckily, my dad who never calls me about anything like that. He just says like, "You've been playing basketball, how's work? Back in school, like you doing your homework." And then
Yeah.
he talks to me about this. And he tells me about that and Palantir, by the way, which I made some money on
No
Palantir,
way.
sold
Wow.
that. But it's like Bitcoin, it's like, wow. And I was and like my dad tells me about this. I'm like listening to podcasts, listening to all types of people talk about it and like the monetary system. I'm like, and then after the Sailor series, after I finished that, I was basically compelled to start writing about Bitcoin because no one was listening to me in my immediate circle. I was like, what's going on? Like, don't you all see this? So I dropped an essay to Bitcoin Magazine, CK. who was the editor at the time. He responded to me in an hour. And I started writing for Bitcoin Magazine. Of course, just you know, pro bono. They weren't paying any of those writers back then, but I was writing with the likes of Mark Goodwin and Mike Hobart and myself. Shinobi was in the group. So all these people, we were like in this little Bitcoin magazine group, and we were just pumping out essays and like
Yep.
probably some other people that I forget, but I remember those guys particularly. And I was writing, dropping essays for about a year and a half, and kind of moved on to other projects. Satoshi's Journal. It wasn't after I met Corey at the 22 conference. It wasn't shortly thereafter he was asking me, "Hey, you want to join the sales team?" I'm like, "Corey, man, I'm an engineer. I can't
Yeah.
do sales." Like I get angry. It's like, how dare you? How
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
dare you not buy what I have to offer? Can't you see that it's great? And I would never get any commission. And then he said, "Well, we're going to ramp up the YouTube team. Why don't you come and work with us over there? You'll learn a little bit from Nico from Simply Bitcoin," which I did. And yeah, I worked with Swan for half a year. The Swan halvening happened. Had to lay off a lot of people that were on the tertiary. I was part time anyways. So working a job and a half is actually a blessing because, like, man, I don't know how much longer I had to do
Mhm.
it. And then I joined the Pleb Underground with Phil, who used to work with Simply Bitcoin, and I've been working with Phil, creating some honest, subjective content for the last year and a half, and it's been great. Working at my own pace, and it's we like to, Bitcoin brought us to the truth of money, and we kind of like to keep talking about the truth about Bitcoin. And it's been rocky, it's been wild, hodling the dips and buying the dips like crazy. I remember after that FTX, I'm like, "Nah, this ain't it." And I remember I was buying like nobody, like I was buying harder than I bought when I first got into Bitcoin. So I had true conviction, and I still do. And I don't want to say the cycle is over. I want to say the cycles as we know it
Mm.
have ended, in my opinion.
So we're talking in early December. I mean, this will come out soon, but we're down at about 90K or something. We're up at 125K. So yeah, what typically, just to set this up a bit, if people don't know, is around this time, historically, Bitcoin goes through 4-year cycles, and it would peak about when it did in the fall of this year, and it does it every 4 years and then crash down quite a bit, which it looks like we're starting to do, and it looks like history will repeat. But it sounds like you think that that structure could be over. So where do you think we are right now?
Well, the problem with the crash is that the higher lows would come into question if we actually get into, the 70% drop that we're used to in times past. And although I've always expected, and I've even heard people like Corey talk about diminishing peaks or diminishing returns on the peaks, which is, I projected that as well. I don't think we're just, when people were saying 400, 500,000, that was stupid. And I would talk about that on the Pleb Underground quite often. But to say that we wouldn't get to 150 or 180, I think it leans into, the dilution of Bitcoin options, if you will. Bitcoin derivatives have taken away the opportunity for people to just buy that asset.
Hmm.
But the ETF, I think that Bitcoin has changed its personality. When you think about what's the audience of the near term investor, the short term investor? The audience of the short term investor is nothing like anything we've seen before 2024. These people are take buying that product through wealth management offices. Very few people are just buying the IBIT. Some people are, but like that's a small percentage. There's a lot of big money moving in multiple layers from these entities out there. And so what I think is that how they how they describe Bitcoin is what makes it so interesting. And I've seen Bitcoin basically act as a macroeconomic barometer for the last, now 2 years going on in January when the ETFs were bought. So basically 22 months. That's not how Bitcoin was back in the day. Bitcoin wasn't like just because, a war in Ukraine starts, Bitcoin doesn't crash. That's like, I shouldn't say that on YouTube either. Now you know why the Pleb Underground doesn't get too many views, because we just start talking about things that are honest. But it's like, the crash of 2020 happened, and there was, you know, things dumped, everything dumped. But Bitcoin kind of operated to the beat of its own drum. You don't see that anymore. You see Bitcoin as a correlation to stocks more than ever. And I think it's because when when these people have their portfolios and they have this 100%, and you've heard this from a lot of the salesmen or the proponents of Bitcoin over the last cycle. You've heard it from the James Lavishes, the Lawrence Lepards, the Jeff Rosses. Their aim, because of who their customer is to say you just need 1% of your portfolio into Bitcoin. Because why? Because, well, you're already a multimillionaire and you're using me to try to tell you what to do. It's like, hey, we're not trying to make you go broke overnight. We just think that you should get that little part just in case it goes up. And it won't hurt you if it dies, but if it goes up, you'll thank me later. The problem is that Bitcoin turns into a Rolex, and it doesn't turn into, it's not Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is for everyone. Everyone buys Coke. Everyone buys, everyone buys, the Budweiser. And so that's for the regular people who buy Coke and Budweiser. It's like, yeah, it's like no matter what, I'm going to buy Coke and Budweiser. But those people, the Rolex people, if things are bad, it's like, yeah, maybe I don't buy the Rolex right now. If things are good, it's like, hey, I'm buying a Rolex. Everyone gets bonuses. So that's what Bitcoin has turned into. And so therefore, when you think about the cycle where regular people or cypherpunks or computer nerds say, oh, I'm buying Bitcoin, it's like, well, their impact on the overall price is much less than the people who are treating Bitcoin. I'm buying it now. And I love Bitcoin. I don't love Bitcoin. I love Bitcoin. I don't love, based on what Jerome Powell is saying.
Yeah.
And so that has impact. And forget Jerome Powell. How about the Treasury general account? How about, what's going on with the Japan carry trade? All of these things that theoretically just doesn't really matter to what Bitcoin is. It ends up affecting more than ever. So I say that as the economy looks good or not, so does Bitcoin. That's agnostic to what the cycles are. So yeah, I think 80,000. We may, and we're dipping today. We went down 4% today. Maybe we don't see anything below 78, 76,000, because guess what? New Fed chair is coming. They're going to drop rates slowly. In my opinion, they're going to drop rates closer to zero by the time 28 comes. So Trump can say, look at how good the economy is. And so you have a lot of liquid quantitative tightening ended. You have a lot of positive pressures for a positive economy that would show those new investors say, hey, you may want to take more risks. And so I think that where I used to think, no, everyone said 26 all-time high, I'm like, they were right. So the cycle is dead. Cycle is dead until something else happens. And something has to happen in fiat land to die for people to run to Bitcoin. And I don't know what that is, some sort of black swan, white swan event. But right now, and for a few years, I think the cycle theory is no longer.
The other thing, and you did this in the recent video about the Treasury general account, is like the previous cycle, fall 4 years ago when Bitcoin started to crash, like it always does. That actually, the whole fiat monetary system and banking system was going the other way, tightening, increasing rates, pulling money out of the system. And yeah, like you said, I mean, they stopped quantitative tightening, what's been happening for years, like this
since
week.
2022, went from 9 trillion to 6.5 trillion, and now the next option would be quantitative easing. It's not coming. It's not happening yet, though.
So if that's the information that matters now in Bitcoin's price in dollars, we're actually going the other way. Like that was the bear market that we just went through. I mean, is that, yeah.
But I still don't think that we have the blow off the top that you
Yeah,
would expect because again, there's always a new story out there to say why the economy is doing this or that. I mean, it's all relative to the latest and greatest. And so people will reassess what the Wall Street Journal says, what Jerome Powell or probably future chair Hassett says, and just those nuances could spark, a cascading effect. Trading algorithms hit. I mean, just last week, I mean, with the Japanese carry trade, I mean, literally at December 1st, UTC 000, Bitcoin dumped 5K out of nowhere. And why? Because
crazy.
it was a combination of the Japanese carry trade and algorithmic bots impact interpreting what that happens, what's happening there. It wasn't a bunch of people losing confidence. It was all automated. And so all of these there's more automation focused on Bitcoin than ever before when you consider AI and everyone's adopting these AI trading. There were bots before. Now the bots are smarter. They're more robust. And so that's going to always have that downward pressure where people aren't, and there won't be as much psychological bullishness than you had before because a lot of people aren't putting their psychology into their decisions. They're just buying a bot and say, buy this for me. And so the people like you and me, yeah, we buy dips and hopefully we're right over time. But that type of like if we went to, let's say we're at 88 now, 90,000 now, we go to all of a sudden we go to 200,000. There'll be so many triggers hit just from a TA perspective. Look what's happening in Zcash. I called it 28 days ago or 30 days ago now. Like when Zcash hit $700, I'm like, the TA is going to kill Zcash. It's not.
Mm.
It has no support between 700 and 200 $200. What's happening? I'm pretty sure it's. I mean, last time I looked 2 days ago, it was at $300 as Bitcoin was recovering.
Hmm.
Why? Because it can't keep up with the fact that there's no support in those ranges of 300, 400, 500. No one bought there. It was like it was just straight up. And so Bitcoin won't have that straight up anymore because there's a lot of bots that are quick to sell that algorithm that TA indicator that it triggered until black swan event, white swan event, whatever. Amazon says we're gonna allow you to buy things with Bitcoin the way Newegg did back in 2014. Guess what happens? Bitcoin goes probably doubles.
Hmm.
It's just straightforward. What else is there? Like, what else is there besides Amazon saying, we'll let you play economic games with Bitcoin? We'll let you buy your toilet paper with Bitcoin.
Hmm.
There aren't that many things. Texas bought 5 million and promises to buy another 5 or 10 million. It helped a little bit. Maybe 5 states need to do that. But yeah, we need something other. If we don't get something big like that, we have the ETF event, President Trump elected, and something else needs to happen at that grand scale, or we kind of play around in these levels with a slow upward climb as people realize 21 million is 21 million. But we don't do 2.5x in 2 months just because it's 2029. It ain't happening. Something else has to happen.
Well, I was just listening to what you said, so now I don't have any question because I was only listening.
I told you I can just go on.
Which
Hey,
is great.
I'm taking a little bit out of time of work so I can talk to you, and now my coworkers don't have to hear me go. A coworker I saw yesterday, he moved to Arizona. He came back to LA for like he comes back like maybe once every three months to do something. I don't know what he does, but he got out of Ethereum and into Bitcoin because of me. And every time I see him, I start talking, and he doesn't say anything. He's like, yeah, yeah. And before I was like, you know what? I got to go work before I just talk your ear off and you can't do your
That's
job. So
great.
it's like, I just love this thing. I love Bitcoin
Me
and I
too.
love, learning about the things that make it go and the things that make it stop. And I try to spend with my free time. I try to, you know, hopefully help people get to some sort of economic clarity and make a good decision for their future and their children's future.
Yeah. Let me ask you then, where are the plebs this cycle? Like it
Plebs are
seems very
there.
quiet. Like, as compared to last cycle was all plebs or mostly plebs. Now it does seem different. Um,
The plebs are there. It's been diluted by newer plebs, which have been impacted by the dual narrative of treasury companies and ETFs.
Yeah.
Self custody. When you're preaching self custody, you're preaching changing the way you act on a regular basis. And so when the ETF, which I think is generally again, without the ETF, you wouldn't get exposed to all those different people that would like to buy but can't because their money is locked up in multiple ways. It's good and bad. But when you come into a world where it's like the ETFs are more important than self custody, the treasury companies are more important than self custody. The plebs essentially lose their fang. They lose their bite. What Michael Saylor used to call cyber hornets is like it's like cyber horseflies now. And that's just par for the course. If we actually have hyper Bitcoinization, how many people are Bitcoiners? Not many.
Right.
But everyone's a Bitcoiner. But what was that from the superhero movie with The Incredibles? When everyone's super, no one is. And that's what we're getting closer to. We have fewer people that are so belligerent about hyper Bitcoinization. It's like, yeah, Bitcoin is just kind of part of like my life. Do you self custody, bro? Like, oh, I mean, do you run a node, bro? It's like, but they have Bitcoin, and that's going to be and they have Bitcoin means someone is holding it for them, and that's going to be that's going to continue. That's not going to. We're not going to go back unless we have some sort of crazy war and people are like it's a dystopian digital future, and we have the all the Bitcoin citadel stuff. I just don't think that that's happening. It's nice science fiction. What we have is just a more lukewarm acknowledgement as Bitcoin is, and it's just another money that we use. Just like if you're going to like some third world country, like for instance Argentina, they'll take your dollars as much as they'll take their peso, and so that future is like essentially everyone will take either Bitcoin or the local currency or the best fiat currency, because the local currency is probably bad. And so you'll have, like what Michael Saylor said, I do believe that that's true. In the future, you'll have five currencies that have survived. Dollar, euro, Chinese yuan, maybe the Russian ruble, and then you have Bitcoin. The problem is that those guys are also dying slowly. And when they have no room to expand, Tether is using where the dollar is using Tether to make itself global. But once you hit the bounds, it's like, hey, you're coming up to the edge of where, the European Union is. It's like the European Union wants their sovereignty as well. It's like you can't go any further. Then it's like you already took over all the African dollars and the liras of the world. Now you've hit the bounds again. Now you have to face what you are is a fiat diluting currency, and Bitcoin is still 21 million. And then those currencies die. Then you end up having the one money of the world to essentially liberate people from government encroachment, government stealing.
Yeah, I mean, you wrote in one of your essays that the fiat system puts people on economic death row, is what you said, which is forcing consumption now.
I'll be honest, I don't remember writing that, but you probably did your research on me, and I probably wrote, what year was that?
Which is a great line. 23, maybe?
So much. Once I stopped writing and doing the videos, I've done so many videos that like a lot of my writing, except for like maybe 3, I remember. And there's so many things I thought in the moment. I love those thoughts, but I need to go back and read.
That's a good one. So I want to ask you about it because it's the incentive structure, right? Like this fiat system is designed in a certain way that makes you spend now, because if you spend later, it's going to get more expensive. And that's how you describe the economic death row, which
that's right.
Bitcoin's the opposite. If you save now, it will be cheaper in the future. They're the exact opposite. That's
right. It goes back to the Austrian kind of use case that savings is I forget the exact words, but savings is the engine of value creation, or savings is the engine of prosperity. Whereas spending, in the Keynesian view, spending is the engine of prosperity. And so we can't spend like the problem, we can't spend enough to keep fiat afloat. That's the problem. The more we
Yeah.
spend, the more we have to spend. But with Bitcoin, when you save, you force the producers to produce something good enough to make them separate, to make you separate to make you separate from your Bitcoin, essentially. So it's like if I buy a car and it's like, you know what? I don't see any car out there that's worth my time. What do? You take a step back. It's like maybe they'll make one in the future. Now, at some point, you gotta. Some people have to drive, but someone, if you're not forced to say, I have to buy this. Someone's going to have to come and say, you know what? I'm going to build something good enough to make you separate from your Bitcoin. Because otherwise, if I don't build it good enough, I'm going to starve because I'm committing a lot of capital assets, a lot of time to build this product, and I have to build it good. What we have is like the producers of this world know that that the money is dying. And so therefore it's like, you know what? These people are without a choice. They either buy now or they buy later, and we're going to still offer the same bad product, and they're just going to have to deal with it because they either buy five of our products now or three of our products later because the money's even worse than our product. So now you have all this Timu knockoff stuff. You have all the Amazon stuff from China,
Hmm.
and this low quality is the QA is bad. Things are peeling. Things are falling apart before it arrives at your doorstep. And so the only way that changes is if quality of the money changes. And Brady Swinson, who's a co-founder of Swan, he also said that the money is the foundation of society. And what it means is that if the money is good, society will be better. It's not going to be perfect. It's not heaven. But if money is bad, then society is bad, and people are looking for ways to, again, whatchamacallit, grifting is going to happen,
Yeah.
but grifting would happen less, and it would happen it wouldn't happen at the government scale because the money is good. Because if the money is good, the government can't use the money to grift, at least
Yep.
not as much.
Yep.
And so I think that's what it boils down to for that analogy.
Yep. Yep. Let's switch over to basketball a little bit.
Love it. Yeah, I was like, man, I hope we have time for it.
Absolutely. So you've got this new channel, highly regarded,
Highly
and
regarded.
I'll link to that. Uh, and you are getting deep into the basketball analytics to try to rank players in a new way. So what are you trying to figure out there, and how are you going about it?
Like I said before, after the Kobe Bryant thing with the Lakers, when he essentially said, "Hey, I'm taking the max money because I'm Kobe," and it's like, well, what about the Lakers, man? Like, you're too old to just carry them with a lottery team. So I started being more objective with how I look at things, and it's like, there's a lot of hate for LeBron at that point, mostly from LA fans, because they knew that a new dog in the race was coming, and they didn't want anyone to supplant what people saw as Kobe Bryant. Like, he's the next best thing to Michael Jordan. It's like, here's this LeBron. There's a lot of hate going. Well, why? It's like he's actually a good player. And so it caused me to look at things more objectively. And then, fast forward time after I discovered Bitcoin, I'm like, look at how objective this is. Is there a way to objectively look at sports? I started getting into basketball reference and like looking at the win shares. I'm like, oh wow, the win shares kind of tell you how much each player is responsible for their team's success, which is what it's supposed to be. It's like we don't when we look at championships, we always say, oh, like Jordan won six. But did he really win six? Or did he have a large share of each of the six? And so looking at that, did Bill Russell win 11 or did he have a significant share of the 11? And so looking at what win shares are, what I found out is that there are a lot of people that have been lost in history because they didn't fit the narrative, maybe the Boston Celtic narrative or the Laker narrative. And there are a lot of players that had a lot of responsibility for great team success and forget championships. Is there What about all the players that we recognize now? Like, for instance, Tyrese Halliburton, who went to the finals. We think of him as a very, very good point guard. We think of, if we go back to the 90s, we thought that John Stockton obviously was a great point guard, but he didn't win any championships. So what does that mean? Well, if he gets to the finals twice, is there any credit to getting to the finals but not winning it? looking at individual awards, is there any credit for being an second place in the MVP voting, but not winning it? Like, what if you were, and I tell this to my friends, like, hey, what if you're 10 times second place in MVP voting, but 10 other people won the MVP? You got 0 and 10 other people got 1. Does that make you worse than all of them or better than all of them? Because 10 different players, but you were always second best. This is the gradients that I want to inject into assessing basketball players, assessing players that have been lost by mainstream media stories in the past. And what I discover is that not taking win shares outright, but massaging it a little bit, and I explain it on my show, but I massage it into a way that can take into 3 different categories of greatness. I average that up and I come up with this formula that every player can be put into this formula and they can be assessed um, relatively. And so what I've come up with is things that kind of make sense outwardly when you think just from a what my friend calls the eye test or something more subjective. When you think about who are the best 5 players of all time, you probably start off with Jordan, LeBron, one of the they can flip flop depending on preference. But then you have Wilt, Kareem, and Magic. And so when I put all these players in this formula, it's like those 5 guys came out on top. I'm like, kind of makes sense. It may disagree with some people. Some people may put Bird up there or Kobe or Bill Russell, but it didn't come up with something completely outlandish. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, it passes the eye test. What else is there? And so in the rest of basically every single player that ever played can be put into this formula and be given an exact spot. And I'm not saying it's perfect, but what I'm saying, it is formulaic, it is objective, and if you wanna make another formula, by all means. But my aim is that in order to really judge players, you have to give them the same standard by which to judge them by. Otherwise, you're bringing in false parallels, false comparisons, uh, intense, human subjectivity, and therefore error, and it's not fair to the people that are likely missed by your eye test or the mainstream media's bias for a good story.
So who are some of the players that jump up in your formula that would be outside of consensus maybe?
Kobe Bryant is 25th. Kobe Bryant's 25th, and I can explain it why. Because he was inefficient. He was inefficient. He missed a lot of shots, and that takes into consideration your efficiency. If you're, we look at this right now, like Cade Cunningham had a 40-point game recently, but took 40 shots to do it.
Yeah, took 44
But
shots.
But you remember that one. But
I
then
saw that one.
Shai Gilgeous has some 30-point games, and he's taken 15 shots, 13 shots. And mind you, he got a lot of free throws. We can talk about free throw merchant if you want, but there's an impact on efficiency.
Mhm.
Isaiah Thomas is not in the list. Who else is not? Kyrie Irving is not in the list. Isaiah Thomas from the Pistons is not in the list because he shared too much. He shared so much of the workload. The Pistons were such a team-oriented success story that he didn't really do enough individually to be considered an individual great by this formula. Same thing could go with Bill Laimbeer.
Mhm.
Dennis Rodman, similar. He didn't do enough individually to be considered an all-time great. And over the course of time, there has to be a large body of work. And Dennis Rodman is similar to Kyrie, although they had individual times where they were very good. They have been in and out of lineups too much in order to be considered individual grades. Um, whom else? Whom else? David Robinson, number 7, 8, or 9. He's top 10. David Robinson took advantage of a less efficient era that he was in, which was essentially the 90s, where teams were scoring 90 points a game. I'm pretty sure we remember those Nick Heat battles and the finals where it's like, oh, the final score is 69-77. It's like, what the heck? And yet still, even in that pace, what they call it in the win share formula, David Robinson was averaging 29 points a game.
Crazy.
When you think about what's better, Luka, who's averaging 34, 33 points a game now. There's like 5 players who are averaging 30, or David Robinson, who's averaging 29 when the teams are scoring 80 points, 85 points a game. It's actually a larger percentage productivity. So he was actually having modern day numbers in a time when the scoring took a dip. And so those are the kind of things that are taken into consideration, which allows you to compare things across eras, where scoring was down, scoring was up. Three pointers were in the rules. You only had 2 pointers. All that is taken into consideration because of how great the win share formula is. And I just massage it a little bit to take into a few additional things, like normalization, which is win shares over 48, or how many great seasons did they have, which I said an arbitrary baseline threshold, and how many times did they go over that win share total for a season. So taking all that into consideration, if people are punching in high numbers on each of those 3 categories, they're an all-time great. If they miss one, they're probably out. And so those are kind of some of the big things I've noticed, which is surprising, but still, you can't take away that Julius Erving, is he a top 15 player? The eye test says he is, and the numbers say he is. So it kind of gives me a warm fuzz. It's a decent vote of confidence for the formula, and therefore I take it as something to argue for and to defend. And if people want to say it's dumb, come up with another formula and see what happens. You'll end up having, oh well, my formula is Kobe Bryant number 1. Well, who do you have in the rest of your top 10? And it's like, it doesn't look like a top 10. So it has to pass a sniff test, right?
And I heard you talk about this, but how do you try to parse out the guys that are just injured, like a Bill Walton, who, for one season might have been the best center ever or something,
right.
But he barely played in other seasons and stuff. Yeah, how do you try to tease that out?
Well, the catch is that if you are good, and I talk about Bill Walton, I talk about Joel Embiid. If you have a good, there's a category called dominance, which is essentially normalization, where it's like, while you play, how good are you? And the same, if Bill Walton is injured, the same thing could be about Shea Gilgeous or Luka Doncic, who have only played 6, 7, 8 seasons. They have a whole body. I'm not ranking in my system. I have Luka Doncic 92 out of like every player ever, and people say Luka's way better than Adrian Dantley. Okay, well, let him play out the rest of his years so he can get there, rather than giving him some arbitrary rank prematurely.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think about Walton or Embiid, and by the way, neither of them are in the top 100, availability is the best ability. And so as great as he is, if you're not playing in the game, Kyrie Irving is the same, with his injuries or his, opting out for, for the time in 2020. I respect it, but from it takes away from your ability to produce, which other players have produced, and maybe they produce at a lesser rate than you, but they produced more than you because they played more games. And injuries or not, that takes, we don't give Michael Jordan, a pass, or Magic Johnson a pass because they missed that one season. They were great despite that. And injuries, hey, I played 0 games in the NBA. I was too short. It's like, well, I don't give people a pass because they're so skilled. Oh, it's like Kyrie Irving's so skilled, Kobe Bryant's so skilled. All the best basketball is obviously a sport for tall people, because you see that the tall people are more efficient, they're closer to the rim, and tall people who can shoot. Dirk Nowitzki, who I think I have ranked 11th, there's an obvious advantage. So I don't give a pass because someone is injured. Just because I don't give a pass if someone's too young. It's all about the numbers, baby.
Yep. How so it would be based on a lot of different things, but the guys with the huge box score numbers, like Oscar Robertson, Russell Westbrook, and Jokic is it too. I'd say he's so much more efficient than Westbrook. But how do you look at guys like that just fill up the traditional 5 stats they put in the box score or whatever?
If they're filling it up, it's going to be recognized. But I would say that if they're filling up when it counts matters as well. So there's regular season, there's playoffs. What you're doing in the playoffs, in my opinion, even though I rank the playoff stats and the regular season stats 50-50 even, you play way fewer playoff games than you do regular season. So it's like
gives it more weighting.
producing in the playoffs, producing that. Let's just say, I mean, LeBron James has played maybe, I think they say 300 playoff games, but he's played like 2,000 regular season games. But whatever his career production is, I weigh them equally. So in a way, each playoff game could be worth like 5 times
Way
more
more. Yeah.
than a regular season game. So I don't get, I don't say, oh, wow, like Russell Westbrook fills up the box scores. People are saying stat padding. It's like, I don't care because it's not going to matter nearly as much as when the playoffs come around. If you're stat padding in the playoffs, guess what happens? You're probably leading your team to victory and historic greatness, which is good. If you're stat padding in the regular season, it's going to be a marginal impact compared to the grand scheme of things. And at the end of the day, look, it's 82 games, and people are going to have big. I mean, how many season highs have we seen against the Washington Wizards or the Portland Trailblazers last year? It's like there's always going to be a weird anomaly out there where someone's scoring 50 points that you think shouldn't have been scoring 50 points, but they did. But it averages out over the grand scheme. And so I don't really stress over that. And honestly, if you can put up great stats in all 5 major categories, which is points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks, then so be it. That means you're pretty decent.
Yeah. This doesn't factor into your formula anyway because you don't care where people were born, but I still want to hear your opinion. The state of United States basketball. So we haven't had a MVP since 2017 or 18, and it doesn't look like one's on the horizon anytime soon. The best 5 players in the league or something are all international. And then like a huge gap below that, I'd say, to like the first American. Have you thought about that? Like why we've slipped?
No, I think it's just I think it's an anomaly because you could say that the best players, you may have the 5 best players foreign born, which by the way, I think Cade Cunningham is probably a top 5 player right now, and he's American. I think he's not Canadian.
No, he's
No.
American.
So he's American. And I think he's probably in the top run with, especially Giannis kind of in this trade limbo state. Like Cade will probably turn out to be a top 4 MVP candidate. So I just think it's an anomaly of what's happening right now. And when you think about, let's just say you have 5 best players or even 6, 7 best players, European or foreign born. The next 20 are American. And then the next below, you may have some European. So it's like that bathtub, if you will it'll just kind of swish and swash over the course of decades. What it shows is that there are legitimate players overseas now, and maybe there always were, but with communication, with scouting, the ability and training, the ability to access those players has greatly improved with technology and with our ability to with transportation. So I do think that that the game will turn out to be more global over time, and that you'll see a better intermixing. And it's just kind of going the ebbs and flows, in my opinion. I think teams try to go find that next great Tony Kukoc a little prematurely, and that they were beaten kind of badly, like with all the great European players, how many of them fell apart? Like Darko Milicic, who was drafted in front of Carmelo or something like that. There's a lot of players, European born, that people were trying to go get the next Dirk or the next Tony Kukoc, and it ended up falling flat. So, those kind of things, I just think that I mean, think about it. Giannis I don't think was a first pick. Jokic was a second round pick.
Yeah.
Shea was traded from the Clippers. There's just going to be, I think it's I think it's more of an anomaly than anything, and it will shake out to, in the next 10 years, I think it will shake out to the United States does have the best players generally. Right now, the VJ Edgecombe, he's from the Bahamas, so it's
Yeah.
like, you know, I think it's just gonna be more grab bag over time.
Yeah. Makes sense. Last question. So why don't you like Bill Simmons?
I think it comes back to, once these people get a little too big, they start saying, I think we're seeing this a lot more now. I mean, Stan Van Gundy, what's his name? There's another guy, Reggie Miller. Um, Sensationalism, even a guy that I would like from a politics standpoint. Who's the big fat black guy? I forget his name.
Charles Barkley?
No, Winworth or Whitworth, Jason Whitworth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Charles Barkley. I don't think he's as keyed into that as Charles Barkley. I think he's a good card player, so I think he hides his overt sensationalism much better. But all
Mhm.
these guys, the Whitworths,
Yeah, Jason Whitlock. That's right.
Whitlock,
Yep. I agree.
Bill Simmons, Stan Van Gundy, all these people that have Reggie Miller, they have a platform and they understand that social media, people like you and me are coming to get them. And they just can't say the cookie cutter things. They have to say something sensational. Stan Van Gundy said that the best 20 players, the best 20 players of all time have all played in the last 20 years, which
Yeah.
essentially he's saying that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is not an all-time great, that Michael Jordan is not an all-time top 20 great. Reggie Miller said that the rookie from Con Canoopal may pass Steph Curry in all-time three-pointers sometime soon. He said that last month. And so I think Bill Simmons was just kind of one of the early people to say things that were obviously outlandish, but I think it's more for the
Mhm.
engagement than more for being accurate. You see my platform, Pleb Underground, we strive for accuracy. We're not going to tell you that we think Bitcoin's going to 400,000 or that $8 trillion is coming into Bitcoin. Guess what? Some people do, and they
Yeah.
get a lot of views,
Yeah.
but that 8 trillion ain't come. So what the heck? Why? Because they're telling you that for sensationalism so they can get clicks. Bill Simmons is a click master. A lot of these people are click masters. They're trying to stay relevant because people have options out there. And that's the bad part is that when people are sensing that, someone's, breathing down your neck and they're going to pass you up in terms of relevance, you have to say anything and everything to stay relevant, especially if you don't really do your homework anymore, because maybe you're a made man. And so I just think, and on top of that, maybe it's historic. He's a Celtic fan, so he generally has a Laker hate. And
Oh,
I've come from
for sure.
LA. Even
Yep.
though I've brought myself to objectivity, I think I still kind of feel that. But like all his trade, his like trade scenarios, I'm like, dude, you're just saying things to get people upset so you can get views. Like, can't you be comfortable in your own skin? Can't you be comfortable in your own knowledge? Maybe he doesn't have much. So
Back to incentive structures. He's doing what makes him the most money.
that's it.
Yep. That's totally fair analysis. All right, so I've got your two channels, Pleb Underground. I've got Highly Regarded that will be linked to wherever you're listening. I've got your website. I'll link.
That's been under construction for like 2 years, but we'll put it there.
All right. Anywhere else people should go to keep up with you?
I do publish an intersection of Christianity and Bitcoin on Substack on occasion, not that much anymore with the basketball YouTube channels taking a lot more time. It's called Belt of Truth, which is based on Ephesians 6:13. And it's basically the intersection, what I think is a real intersection of Bitcoin knowledge and Christian and a Christian worldview. Also, the Pleb Underground, we're starting a weekly. We were going bi-weekly with our tag up with me, Phil, and Humble. We're going to move to a weekly show, and it's going to be called separate branding. It's going to be called Bitcoin Tonight, and we're going to start that essentially this upcoming Monday. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, I'm happy to have been on the show, and thanks for having me.